We booked the tickets to New York on a discount that felt like a wink from the universe. He forwarded me the confirmation email with a subject line that read, "Adventure with you," and I saved it like a photograph. The week before we left, I caught myself rehearsing the simplest things, what hand I'd hold on the subway, where I'd stand in line, so our shoulders touched. It sounds small until you realize how many years you've waited for the most ordinary intimacy. The morning of our trip, the air was cool and hopeful. We packed light because we always plan like minimalists and live like people who think snacks are a love language. He carried the bag with chargers and books. I carried the one with an extra sweater and a first aid kit because a lifetime of being the responsible friend is hard to turn off. On the train into the city, we didn't talk much. We watched the countryside tilt into suburbs and then collapse into brick and steel. He rested his head back and let his knee lean against mine, and I thought, this is a new closeness with an old soul. We got off at Penn Station and stood for a second like tourists who had forgotten how to move their legs. Then New York rushed at us. Voices, wheels, steam sighing out of grates like the streets themselves were alive. We walked out into the bright cold and became, for a weekend, the kind of people who love getting lost on purpose. We did all the small, human things you never see in movies. We found a coffee shop where the milk foam looked like a cloud that had married a spoon. We argued cheerfully over which side of the street had better light for photos. We split a bagel that somehow tasted like a childhood neither of us had lived. We rode the subway, leaning into the sway at the same time, our fingers interlaced. A woman across from us was knitting something mustard yellow. A child asked a question so sincere it turned the whole car into one big, amused smile. The city pressed against us, and we pressed right back. We walked the high line around Golden Hour. The buildings became mirrors that caught the sky. He tucked a loose hair behind my ear with a tenderness that recognized how long I had waited for simple gestures to be allowed, and my heart answered with a quiet yes. A busker sang a love song that had no right to be that good for a Tuesday. I left $1 and a piece of my chest in their guitar case. At night in the hotel room, the city hummed through the window. We lay on top of the covers and told each other stories we hadn't realized we were still carrying. He told me the worst day he'd had at 15 and why he hadn't said anything to anyone. I told him about the year I convinced myself I didn't need anyone, and how my body had called me a liar with migraines and insomnia. We didn't fix each other. We listened like we were mapping constellations that had always been there, but needed a darker sky to be seen. The next morning, we walked in the rain because we were already out when it started and because some days you accept the weather as a personality trait of the world. He bought an umbrella from a street vendor and managed to break it within 10 minutes by laughing too hard as a gust turned it inside out. We were soaked and ridiculous, and so alive I wanted to memorize the scene cell by cell. We found a diner and sat in a booth that squeaked when you shifted your weight. He ordered pancakes, and I ordered eggs, and then we split both like fair people who happen to know that pancakes taste better when you steal the first bite. The waitress called us honey and sweetheart, as if we'd always been those people. I touched his wrist and felt, again, the hum of gratitude that this was allowed now, that nothing inside me had to shrink for us to fit. On the last night, we stood on a small bridge in Central Park and watched the city reflect itself into the water like it was practicing reincarnation. He leaned his head against mine. You know, he said quietly, I always thought love would be the loudest thing that ever happened to me. I turned to look at him, and he smiled half shy. This feels steady, like a good engine, like something that would carry us a long time. Back home, life didn't turn into a montage exactly, but it did begin to collect these moments that felt like proof. Some days our love was a clean kitchen at 10 p.m. Some days it was the way he rubbed a circle on my back in the grocery store line because I looked like a woman trying not to think about work while choosing apples. Some days it was the apology that arrived without being demanded. There was a week that tested us. I took on too much at work because I wanted to be the version of myself who solves problems with competence and grace, and instead I became the version who wakes up at 3 a.m. thinking about punctuation in emails. He had a deadline that stacked itself like unstable blocks, and we both started moving like people avoiding furniture in the dark. We didn't snap, but we did tighten. Our voices got thinner. Our jokes lost their landing gear. On the third day, he put his laptop on the floor and sat beside me. "Can we press pause?" he asked. Not on work, on us moving past each other like ghosts. We made tea. We sat on the kitchen tile like teenagers because standing felt like too much responsibility. We told the truth softly. I said I needed help asking for help. He said he needed me to tell him when reassurance would actually land instead of bouncing off a wall of busyness. We didn't fix the week. We changed the shape of it. We moved our bodies through it together, even if it just meant brushing arms on the way to the printer. Our cat got sick once. Nothing dramatic, but dramatic enough for people whose hearts live partially inside a creature that weighs less than a watermelon. We noticed first in the way she sat, too round like her edges hurt. We noticed next in the way she didn't come to the door. He called the vet, and I Googled symptoms until he gently took my phone away, because sometimes love is protecting a person from their own search history. We put her in a carrier and whispered apologies through the mesh. At the clinic, we waited with a man whose dog was wearing a sweater that declared her a princess and an elderly woman who referred to her cat as my roommate, which felt accurate and holy. When our turn came, the vet was kind in the way that feels like a blanket. She spoke in the voice you use when people are scared. The diagnosis was something with a plan attached, something fixable with time and pills hidden in treats. We went home to the sound of our cat purring like a restarted engine, and we sat on the floor and cried a little because fear had wound us tight, and now it was unwinding. That night, he washed the dishes like he was dancing. I dried them like I was praying. "I know it was just a small thing," he said, water slipping off his hands. But I felt the part of me that can't imagine this apartment without her. I nodded, towel paused midair. "And without you," he added, eyes meeting mine in that straightforward way he has when he's telling a truth he used to avoid. I put the towel down and let myself feel it. The softness and the gravity, the way love rearranges the furniture of your soul to make space for other beings to sit. We went to therapy every other Tuesday and developed the kind of in-jokes you get only from describing your brains to a third party. We learned that I interrupt when I'm scared something will be misunderstood. We learned that he gets quiet when he's afraid the truth will hurt me. We practiced the sentence, "Can you say that again, but slower?" We practiced the kindness of saying, "Do you want comfort or solutions?" before we offered either. We learned to notice when we were talking to a fear instead of to each other. There were days I was jealous of the past, of women he'd loved before me in secret, before I knew I'd be allowed to love him in the future. There were days he felt a pang about the men I'd dated, the versions of me who existed in apartments without him. We talked about it not like prosecutors, but like historians. What actually happened? What story was each of us telling ourselves about it? Do we want to keep telling it that way? We laughed once when we both realized we were jealous of ghosts. It helped to name them as such. Holidays with his family grew from a polite invitation to a tradition. I learned how to fold napkins the way his aunt liked, and that his cousin would eat the green beans if you added lemon zest. He learned the names of my grandparents' friends who weren't actually related to me, but functioned like extra aunts and uncles, and he memorized who needed help standing after dinner, because kindness is a language you can learn. He wore a ridiculous sweater one Christmas and made every photo better by being in it. Friendships evolved around us. Our old roommates found new apartments and partners in cities. We helped one move on a day, so humid it felt like being inside someone else's breath. We brought beer and carried boxes and didn't say out loud how change always costs something. We sat on a bare floor at noon and ate sandwiches and watched a leaf of a rubber plant twitch in a breeze none of us could feel. We told the kind of stories you tell when you're standing in a doorway between rooms. The past we shared, the future we were separately inventing. There was a night the power went out. The building sighed, and the lights dropped, and suddenly we were living in a smaller world made of candles and the one flashlight we could find. We played cards on the rug and told ghost stories that weren't scary, but made us feel like kids again. I lay on my back and watched the candlelight invent new versions of his face on the ceiling. He said, softly, "I'm glad the world is small with you." The hospital called once for a follow-up months after his scare. It was routine and quick, a check, a nod, a "you're fine." We went together anyway, because sometimes you re-walk the road that hurt you to prove it's safe now. We held hands in the waiting room and read outdated magazines. He asked if I remembered the soup I'd left on the stove that night. I told him I still can't make that recipe without feeling my heart speed up. He kissed the back of my hand like he was reassuring the past. We talked, tentatively at first, and then with more ease, about futures. Not like plans carved in granite, but like invitations written in pencil. Did we want to stay in the city? Did we want a bigger kitchen or a porch? Did we want to add a person to our duo? Now or later or never? We took walks where we said maybe a lot and learned that maybe can be a promise if you hold it right. We made a list of things that would make any home feel like ours. Good light, a place for books, a corner where a cat could sun herself into a nap. One Saturday, we went ring-looking almost by accident, the way you wander into a gallery because it's open and you have time. We held small circles of metal in our palms like miniature moons and talked about design like it was a metaphor for who we were. I liked simple bands that looked like they had been used to seal letters in old stories. He liked settings that caught light and then made it dance. We didn't buy anything. We weren't ready. But as we left, he squeezed my shoulder and said, "It's nice to imagine." We took a short road trip to the coast in late summer and discovered that we are both extremely serious about roadside peaches. We bought a paper bag that bled juice and ate two in the parking lot like we had never heard of napkins. He laughed with his whole body, and I thought, not for the first time, that his joy is my favorite weather. We walked a beach that glittered with mica and picked up shells just to put them down again because not everything you love should be moved. On the way back, we got lost, which was a plot twist that used to stress me out, and now just means we find new music on a staticky radio station and point at barns like we've never seen architecture. We passed a field where horses were standing like questions. He said, "I think the secret is that we're always on the same side." I said, "Against what?" He said, "The rest of it." We didn't need to define the rest of it. It was everything that wasn't the two of us facing the same direction. That fall, work asked me to present at a conference. I said yes, and then remembered I was afraid of microphones. He helped me build slides that looked like a clear morning. We practiced in the living room while the cat tried to sit on the keyboard with the kind of determination that could power a small city. The night before, I stood in front of the mirror and made myself meet my own gaze. He stood behind me and straightened my jacket and said, "You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be you in a room with your ideas. That's already enough." The talk went well. Strangers nodded in ways that felt like solidarity. I came home to flowers in an old jar and a note that said, "Proud of you always. Not surprised ever." I cried a happy, confusing tear into the petals. We hosted Thanksgiving that year for the first time, which meant we learned about timing in a way that felt like choreography for people who can't dance. He took the turkey like a personal challenge. I took sides like auditions for a chorus line. The oven ran hot, the cranberry sauce stained a dishcloth forever, and at one point the smoke alarm declared war on us, and we, in turn, learned where the off button lived. People brought pies that could have doubled as truce offerings. We went to bed exhausted and full and smelling like nutmeg. Winter came, and with it a quiet that felt like the world taking a deep breath. We bought matching hats by accident, because love will turn you into the kind of people who accidentally match. We walked at night when the air made nostalgia out of your breath. We came home with pink cheeks and made cocoa topped with marshmallows that defied gravity. We fell asleep on the couch under a blanket that had seen better days, but had also seen us become the people who saved it. I used to think relationships were about reacting gracefully to whatever came at you. With him, I learned they are at least as much about choosing deliberately what you send out, kindness in advance, patience on credit, affection like a thermostat set to warm and left there. We decided, regularly, to be on each other's side, even when being on our own side would have been easier. We built systems for our love, the way people build irrigation for a garden. Boring, maybe, but the reason things bloom. We made a ritual out of Sunday mornings. Not church, at least not the kind with pews. Our church was coffee and a notebook. We called it State of the Union because we are nerds with a sense of humor. We asked, "How are you?" "No, really." We said, "What could I do this week that would help?" We asked, What did I do last week that made you feel seen? It took 15 minutes. It saved us 2 days of guessing. There were setbacks. I forgot a plan once. A small thing that landed like a big thing because it had been a hard day for him and my absence made the day heavier. He didn't scold me. He told me what it felt like standing at a bus stop in the rain and watching your bus go by. I apologized without the word, but attached to it. I made space for the feeling and didn't try to rearrange the furniture around it to make myself look better. The next week, I set a reminder titled, "Bus Stops Matter." He laughed when he saw it on my phone. I did too. Humor is a door you can walk through together when the room gets stuffy. We grew good at celebrating small victories. We rang a silly bell we bought at a thrift store when something went right. A recipe nailed, a tough call made, a bill paid early, an email finally sent. We high-fived in the hallway and then realized the cat was watching with profound judgment. We high-fived her too. She tolerated it like a sovereign. One evening in spring, we made the soup I'd abandoned the night of the hospital. We put the pot on the stove like a ritual. We chopped celery and onion and carrot with the reverence you give to ordinary things that saved you. He stirred with an easy wrist and said, "I don't think I realized, until that night, how much your love was holding me together even when we were only friends." I picked up the salt and put it down again. "Me too," I said. And what I meant was I didn't know there was a version of home where I didn't have to pretend I was fine to keep my place in it. We took a photo of the bowls on the table, the steam ghosting up like a message we weren't supposed to read. I didn't post it anywhere. Some things want to live only where you can touch them. In early summer, we helped my parents move a couch and discovered we were stronger than we had been the last time we tried to carry a couch, which felt like the sort of progress worth bragging about. We stopped for ice cream after because that is the currency of manual labor. He ate his too fast and got a headache that made him look like a man receiving a telegram from his brain. Stop. I rubbed his temples and declared him a brave soldier. He declared me ridiculous. We were both right. We had a fight once. Or rather, we had a moment that could have been a fight if we had let it. It was about nothing and everything, about a plan that changed twice, about a text that went unanswered because a phone was on silent, about a tone that belonged to a headache and not a heart. We paused. We breathed. He said, "I'm scared we're ruining the day." I said, "I'm scared I'm failing you." We looked at each other like a mirror you're afraid to check. And then we laughed, gently, sheepishly, because we were two tired mammals trying to read storm clouds into a glass of water. We ate sandwiches. We took a walk. The world tilted back into place. When the anniversary of the hospital scare came around, we didn't make a thing of it. We made soup. We walked by the river. We said thank you in different languages, with a kiss, with a back rub, with the car turned around to retrieve a forgotten scarf. Gratitude doesn't always need ceremony. Sometimes it needs socks warm from the dryer. I don't know when we'll make whatever legal promises people make to satisfy their parents or insurance companies. I don't know if we'll buy a house or if we'll always be the people who make any rented square footage feel like ours by putting art on the walls and herbs on the sill. I do know this. Home is where he is and where our cat patrols the hallway like a captain and where I can breathe with my whole chest because I am wanted exactly as I am. People say friends can't become lovers. People say too much, sometimes. They don't know the years of grocery lists and movie nights and shared keys. They don't know what it felt like to sit in a hospital corridor and realize that the word friend had always held a second meaning we were too scared to translate. They don't know about the soup, or the cat, or the rain in New York, or the Sunday notebook, or the tiny bell that says something good happened today. I believe love can be born out of friendship. I believe it can be steady enough to carry you through the loud parts and the quiet ones. I believe in hands that already know how to hold you before they ever think to touch your face. I believe in the courage of trying again, but together this time. And if you're listening with a mouth full of maybe, I believe in you too. So I'll ask once more, and then I'll leave you with the softness we earned. Do you believe that love can grow from friendship? Share your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for listening till the end. If you'd like more stories, please like and subscribe.